Vantage Point Station hung in orbit like a monument to commercial mortality, its docking bays filled with the corpses of ships that had outlived their usefulness. Captain Ryan Torres stood in the auction hall watching salvage dealers catalog their next prey, and tried not to think too hard about how he'd ended up here, broke and desperate enough to gamble everything on a scrapyard bargain. 3 months since the pirate attack, 3 months since his ship, the Providence, had been reduced to expanding debris and insurance claims that barely covered his debts. 3 months of living in station hostels and taking day labor jobs while he searched for a way back to the stars. The auction was his last shot. One decent salvage purchase, one ship he could repair and flip for profit, and he'd have enough capital to start over. "Next item," the auctioneer announced, and the display screens shifted to show a vessel that made Ryan's breath catch. Velshara cruiser, approximately 40 meters length, appears intact. Salvage rights with full ownership transfer. Starting bid, 5,000 credits. The hall fell silent. Ryan looked around, confused. 5,000 credits for a Velshara cruiser was insane, even stripped for parts. The ship should be worth 50 times that. Velshara engineering was legendary, their vessels among the most sophisticated in known space. 5,000 credits, the auctioneer repeated, and Ryan could hear tension in his voice. "Do I have any bids?" The salvage dealers whispered among themselves, but no one raised a hand. A few edged toward the exits. Ryan studied the ship's displayed specifications. Hull integrity, intact. Power systems, functional. Life support, active. This wasn't a derelict, this was a working vessel somehow sitting in a scrapyard with a joke of a starting price. His instincts, honed through 15 years of questionable decisions in dangerous space, screamed that this was wrong. Ships like this didn't get abandoned. Something was keeping everyone else away. But his desperation screamed louder. He needed a ship. This was a ship. The math was simple even if the situation wasn't. 5,000 credits, Ryan called out before his survival instincts could overrule his desperation. The auctioneer's relief was visible. 5,000 from bidder 773. Do I hear 6,000? The silence was absolute. Half the people in the hall were actively leaving now. 5,000 once, twice, sold to bidder 773. Transaction processing immediately. The auctioneer moved to the next item with obvious eagerness to be done with the Velshara cruiser. Ryan made his way to the registration desk, where a clerk processed his payment with the kind of careful neutrality that suggested she'd seen this play out before, and it never ended well. "Docking Bay Theta 7, she said, handing him the access codes. "Ownership transfers on boarding. Station assumes no liability for condition, contents, or consequences." That last part isn't standard phrasing. No, it isn't. She looked at him with something like pity. "Good luck, Captain Torres." Ryan found Station Master Chen waiting outside the auction hall, the old man's scarred face showing concern that looked genuine rather than professional. "Torres, hold up." Ryan stopped. He'd dealt with Chen before, found him to be one of the few station authorities who treated freelance haulers like actual humans rather than potential criminal problems. "That ship in Bay Theta 7, Chen said without preamble. "You sure about this? It's a working Velshara cruiser for 5,000 credits. What's not to be sure about? The fact that 53 people have boarded that ship since it arrived 2 years ago. 47 of them left immediately and refused to discuss what they saw inside. 6 never came back out." Ryan felt cold settle in his stomach. "And you're telling me this after I bought it? You bought it the second you placed that bid." Auctioneer was under instructions to close sale immediately to prevent buyer's remorse. "I'm telling you now so you go in prepared." "Prepared for what?" "Whatever's in there that makes people run away or disappear. My advice: sell the salvage rights to someone else before you board, take your loss and walk away." "I'm already broke, Chen. I can't afford to take a loss." "You can't afford whatever's in that ship either." Chen sighed. "But I can see you're going anyway. Take a weapon. Take a comm. And Torres, Whatever you see in there, remember that if it wanted you dead, those 6 missing people would probably have come back out. Ryan made his way to docking bay Theta 7 with growing unease, Chen's warning echoing in his head. The bay was isolated, placed in a section of the station reserved for quarantine cases and hazardous materials. No other ships occupied nearby berths. The Velshara cruiser sat in its docking cradle like a predator at rest. Its hull was pristine, showing none of the damage or wear Ryan expected from a salvaged vessel. Organic curves and bioluminescent accent lines marked it unmistakably as Velshara design, sophisticated and elegant in ways human engineering rarely achieved. Ryan approached the airlock, his new access codes broadcasting automatically. The airlock opened smoothly, atmosphere equalizing with a hiss that sounded almost like a sigh. He stepped inside. The interior was as pristine as the exterior, maintained, clean, showing no sign of abandonment. Bioluminescent strips activated as he moved, responding to his presence, lighting his path deeper into the ship. The design was beautiful, flowing lines that seemed grown rather than built, surfaces that felt warm to the touch. This wasn't an abandoned ship. This was a maintained vessel whose crew had simply left, hidden, stayed very, very quiet. Ryan moved cautiously toward the bridge, his scanner showing atmosphere, power, and life support all functioning normally. Too normally. This ship was ready to fly right now if someone wanted it to. He was halfway through the central corridor when he saw her. She stood in the intersection ahead, tall and regal, with luminous skin that caught the bioluminescent lighting in subtle patterns. Her long ears swept back from her head in the distinctive Velshara morphology, their tips adorned with what looked like crystallized starlight. She wore formal clothing that was elegant despite obvious wear, and carried herself with the kind of unconscious authority that couldn't be faked. She looked directly at him with eyes that held exhaustion, wariness, and something that might have been resignation. "You are the one who claimed the ship," she said, her voice carrying harmonics his translation implant struggled to fully render. "Do you understand what that means?" Ryan's hand had moved instinctively toward his weapon, but he froze as his brain processed multiple revelations simultaneously. The ship wasn't abandoned. She was Velshara royalty based on the insignias visible in the corridor behind her, and she'd clearly been waiting for someone to claim ownership. "I understand I bought a ship at auction," he said carefully. "I'm starting to suspect I bought more than that. Much more." She studied him with unsettling intensity. "I am Lyria, Queen of Velshara Prime, or I was before my cousin orchestrated a coup 3 years ago. This vessel is my personal ship, my final refuge, and under Velshara law, my legal extension." "Your legal extension." Royal vessels are considered inseparable from the sovereign herself, a safeguard designed to prevent enemy capture. Lyria moved closer, and Ryan fought the urge to step back. "When you claimed ownership of this ship, you triggered ancient protocols. By Velshara law, you are now my bonded consort with full access to sovereign authority." Ryan's brain stuttered trying to process this. "I'm sorry, what?" "The vessel's new owner becomes the Queen's consort. It is designed to ensure royal ships never fall into unauthorized hands. Anyone claiming ownership immediately becomes legally bound to the sovereign, granted access to resources and codes that prevent hostile use." "That's insane." I can't. I just wanted a ship to haul cargo." "Nevertheless, the law is clear, and the ship's AI has already recognized you as legitimate owner. You have access to command systems, sovereign codes, and resources that could reshape the balance of power across multiple sectors." Lyria's ears drooped slightly. "You also have access to the target painted on my back by everyone who wants me dead or wants those codes for themselves." Ryan sat down heavily on a nearby bench, his cheap salvage purchase having just become exponentially more complicated. "Why didn't you warn anyone? Why let people keep boarding if this would happen?" "I expected the legal complication to deter anyone from claiming ownership. For 2 years it worked. People boarded, discovered the situation, and fled rather than accept the bond. She sat across from him, exhaustion showing in her posture. You are the first who actually completed the purchase without knowing the consequences. The 6 people who never came back out came for other reasons. 3 were assassins who discovered I was not as defenseless as they assumed. 2 were loyalists who found me and chose to stay, helping maintain the ship. 1 was. She hesitated, a merchant who learned the truth and tried to sell my location to the highest bidder. The ship's AI prevented that communication. You killed him. The AI made his death look like a system malfunction. I had no choice. His transmission would have led killers here within hours. Ryan rubbed his face, trying to organize thoughts that kept spiraling into panic. Okay, so I'm accidentally bonded to an exiled queen. I have access to sovereign codes that will make me a target, and people are going to try to kill both of us to get those codes, or just to eliminate the legitimate royal line. Is that about right? Essentially correct, yes. Can we undo this, break the bond somehow? Only through death or through my formal renunciation of sovereignty. The first option is permanent. The second would invalidate the very codes that make you valuable and leave me completely vulnerable to assassination with no legal protection. So we're stuck. We are bound by protocols neither of us chose, yes. Lyria stood, moving to a viewport that showed the station beyond. I am sorry, Ryan Torres. You sought a simple salvage opportunity and found a political nightmare. But I cannot release you without destroying myself, and I am not yet prepared to die. Ryan looked at this exiled queen, this woman who'd been hiding in a ship for 2 years hoping the legal complications would keep her safe, and felt his anger mixing with something dangerously close to sympathy. What happens now? Now people learn you claim the ship. Word spreads. Offers come, then threats, then violence. You face the same choice 53 others faced: flee and abandon your claim, or stay and navigate politics that will absolutely try to kill you. And if I stay? Lyria turned from the viewport, her luminous eyes meeting his directly. Then we survive together. I teach you to use the sovereign codes that are now yours to command. You help me determine whether my exile was cowardice or wisdom, and we both hope we're strong enough to face what comes next. Ryan thought about his destroyed ship, his depleted resources, his lack of alternatives. He thought about Chen's warning and the 6 people who died in this vessel. He thought about walking away from the galaxy's most complicated salvage purchase. Then he thought about 15 years surviving on the edges, making impossible situations work through stubbornness and improvisation. This was just another impossible situation. Granted, it involved royalty and ancient legal protocols, and people who were definitely going to try to kill him, but the core principle remained the same: adapt or die. I'm going to regret this, he muttered. Almost certainly, Lyria agreed. But I need a ship, and this one comes with a queen and sovereign codes and apparently a target on my back. That is accurate summary, yes. Ryan stood, extending his hand in the human gesture of agreement. Then we're stuck with each other. Let's try not to get killed figuring out what that means. Lyria regarded his hand for a moment before taking it, her grip firm and warm. The ship's name is Sanctuary. I chose it hoping it would be exactly that, a safe refuge where I could hide from the consequences of my choices. How's that working out? I have not been murdered yet, so perhaps better than expected. Something that might have been humor showed in her expression. Though the arrival of an accidental consort does complicate the concept of sanctuary considerably. The ship's AI chose that moment to activate its voice interface, speaking in harmonics that Ryan's implant rendered as amused. Welcome, Consort Ryan Torres. I am pleased to finally have proper crew complement again. Queen Lyria has been excellent company, but she does tend toward brooding isolation. Perhaps you will provide more entertaining conversation. Ryan looked at Lyria. Your ship is sarcastic. She has developed personality during our exile. I believe she was lonely. Sanctuary, Ryan addressed the AI. How bad is this situation really? On a scale of minor inconvenience to catastrophic political nightmare, I would rate your current circumstances at existentially complicated with high probability of violence. However, you have survived less favorable odds before. Your service record shows remarkable resilience in suboptimal conditions. You've been reading my files. I have been integrating you into command systems as required by consort protocols. This includes comprehensive background analysis. You have led an interesting life, Captain Tours. Several of your customs evasion techniques were quite clever. I'm a legitimate cargo hauler. You are a cargo hauler who occasionally hauls cargo through spaces where customs officials prefer not to know cargo is being hauled. The distinction is semantic, but apparently important to your self-perception. Lyria was definitely trying not to smile. Sanctuary approves of your practical moral flexibility. She finds my absolutist tendencies tiresome. Your absolutist tendencies kept you alive during the coup, the AI countered. Though Consort Tours raises an interesting question about whether absolute principles become obstacles when circumstances require adaptation. Ryan felt like he'd walked into the middle of a 3-year-long philosophical debate between a queen and her ship. Can we table the ethics discussion and focus on immediate survival? You said word would spread. How quickly? Station communication networks have already transmitted auction results to 12 separate intelligence services and 7 major news outlets. Your name and the ship's identification are now distributed across 4 sectors. I estimate first contact from interested parties within 2 hours, first assassination attempt within 18. Fantastic. Suggestions. Lyria moved to a command console, pulling up tactical displays. We leave the station immediately. Sanctuary can maintain stealth protocols that kept me hidden for 2 years. Once clear of the station, we reassess options. Leave and go where? Away from people trying to kill us. Beyond that, I am open to suggestions. Ryan looked at the tactical display showing the station's layout, the various ships docked nearby, the patrol routes of security forces. His cargo hauling instincts kicked in automatically, plotting escape routes and assessing risks. We'll need to file departure clearances. That gives away our trajectory. Sanctuary can falsify clearances while actually departing on different vectors. She has done this before. How illegal is that? Extremely, but less problematic than assassination. Ryan nodded slowly. This was happening. He was fleeing the station on a stolen, technically legally purchased royal vessel, with an exiled queen, who was now legally his consort, carrying sovereign codes that would make him a target for forces he barely understood. Just another day in the complicated life of a freelance cargo hauler. All right, he said. Let's go be hunted by people we haven't even met yet. What could possibly go wrong? Sanctuary's AI made a sound that was definitely amusement. I have compiled a list of potential complications. Would you like them alphabetically or by probability of occurrence? Neither. Just get us off this station before someone decides to collect me permanently. As Sanctuary began departure procedures, Ryan watched Vantage Point Station recede on the view screen and wondered what he'd gotten himself into. Behind him, Queen Lyria stood at her command station, her bioluminescence flickering with colors Ryan was learning to read as determination mixed with hope she was trying not to feel. They were bound by ancient law, hunted by multiple factions, and completely unprepared for what came next. But they were moving. Sometimes that was enough. Sanctuary cleared Vantage Point Station's traffic control zone using falsified departure vectors that would lead trackers toward the outer colonies, while the ship actually angled toward the sparse territories between established trade routes. Ryan watched the deception unfold with professional appreciation. He'd pulled similar tricks hauling questionable cargo, but never with this level of sophistication. Your ship is really good at hiding, he observed. She has had extensive practice, Lyria said from her command station. 3 years of evading detection teaches efficiency. Ryan explored the bridge while Sanctuary handled navigation. The command interfaces were elegant and intuitive once his neural implant adapted to Velshara design language. Information flowed naturally, responding to thought as much as touch. He could feel the ship's systems at the edge of his consciousness, available but not intrusive. The consort bond isn't just legal, he realized. It's neural integration. Yes, you now have command access equivalent to mine. Sanctuary responds to both of us as equal authority. Lyria pulled up a holographic display showing the bond's architecture, neural pathways connecting Ryan to the ship's AI in patterns that looked almost organic. It cannot be removed without severe neurological damage. The bond is designed to be permanent. So if I tried to sell the ship or transfer ownership, the neural integration would resist violently. Previous consorts who attempted severance experienced seizures, coma, or death. The bond enforces itself through biology as much as law. Ryan sat down heavily. Nobody mentioned that at the auction. Nobody knew I was still aboard. They assumed this was simply an abandoned royal vessel with complicated ownership protocols. You are the first to discover the situation includes an actual living queen. Lucky me. Sanctuary interjected. If I may offer perspective, 52 previous boarders fled immediately upon learning the complications. Consort tours stayed. This suggests either remarkable courage or remarkable desperation. Definitely the second one, Ryan muttered. Lyria smiled slightly. Sanctuary, privacy mode please. I need to speak with Consort Tours privately. The AI's presence withdrew from the immediate environment, leaving them alone on the bridge. You can call me Ryan. The whole Consort Tours thing is weird. As you wish. And you may call me Lyria when we're private. She moved to sit across from him, her formal bearing softening slightly. I owe you explanation beyond simple legal protocols. I'm listening. 3 years ago, I was Queen of Velshara Prime, leading our people through a period of significant reform. I believed our traditional hierarchies had become obstacles to progress. That genetic determinism was preventing talented individuals from contributing based solely on bloodline politics. I pushed for merit-based advancement, for opening restricted technologies to broader populations, for alliances with species we'd historically maintained distance from. Sounds reasonable. To me, yes. To conservative factions, it was cultural suicide. They believed I was destroying traditional Velshara values, that equality would eliminate the genetic excellence our civilization was built upon. My cousin Varen led the opposition. When I refused to moderate my reforms, he orchestrated a coup with military support. Lyria's bioluminescence dimmed with memory. My personal guard fought to evacuate me. Most died buying time. I reached this ship with maybe an hour before coup forces would have secured the palace completely. I fled, believing my absence would prevent the civil war Varen threatened. Did it? No. The fighting I tried to prevent happened anyway. Loyalists who supported my reforms were purged. Progressive policies were reversed. And I hid here, aboard Sanctuary, convincing myself that exile was noble sacrifice rather than cowardice. Ryan heard the guilt beneath her words. You think you abandoned your people. I know I did. I told myself it was strategic retreat, that my presence would escalate violence, that removing the controversial queen would allow stability. But my absence didn't bring stability. It brought exactly the authoritarian crackdown I'd opposed. Varen consolidated power while I hid in a ship nobody dared to claim. Why didn't you fight back? You have sovereign codes, loyal followers, resources. Why stay hidden? Lyria was silent for a long moment. Because I believed the conservatives might be right, that my reforms were naive idealism causing genuine harm, that my vision for Velshara was destroying something valuable in pursuit of something impossible. 3 years in exile gave me time to question whether I was a good queen removed by circumstances, or a bad queen removed by necessity. Ryan absorbed this. You're not hiding from your cousin. You're hiding from the possibility that he was right to remove you. Yes. Her bioluminescence flickered with emotions Ryan was learning to read: shame, uncertainty, residual determination fighting resignation. I have spent 3 years here questioning everything, reviewing every choice, wondering if my exile was punishment I deserved rather than injustice I suffered. That's heavy. It is burden I carry. And now you carry it with me, bound by protocols you never agreed to, invested in conflicts you never chose. Ryan stood, pacing the bridge while organizing thoughts. Okay, here's what I understand. You're an exiled queen with resources and codes that could challenge the current government. You've been hiding because you're not sure you were right to reform things in the first place. Your cousin is in power doing exactly the authoritarian stuff you opposed. And now I'm legally bonded to you with access to everything that makes this situation valuable or dangerous depending on who's asking. Accurate summary. And people are going to try to kill us, bribe us, or force us to give them what we have. Also accurate. Ryan stopped pacing. Then we need to figure out what we actually want. Because running forever isn't sustainable. And hiding in a ship while pretending we're not deciding anything is still deciding something. It's deciding to let other people shape outcomes. Lyria's ears perked up, focusing on him with sharp attention. What are you proposing? I'm proposing we stop pretending this situation will resolve itself. You're in exile because you made choices that threatened powerful people. I'm bonded to you because I was desperate enough to buy a ship nobody else would touch. We're both stuck in situations we didn't plan for. So the question is, what do we actually want to do about it? I want my people to be free from Varen's authoritarian rule, but I fear my return would cause more harm than good. That's not what you want, that's what you're afraid of. There's a difference. Ryan moved to stand beside her at the viewport, watching stars streak past. Look, I've spent 15 years hauling cargo through spaces where the law is flexible and survival requires making hard choices quickly. I've learned that indecision kills you faster than wrong decisions. You need to figure out what you actually believe, not just what you're afraid might be true. Before Lyria could respond, Sanctuary's alert system activated. We have company, 3 vessels emerging from hyperspace on intercept vectors. Transponders identify them as Velshara military, current regime designation. Already, Ryan pulled up tactical displays. How did they track us? Unknown. My stealth protocols should have prevented detection. Someone with very sophisticated tracking technology is sharing our position. Lyria stood, her earlier uncertainty vanishing as crisis demanded action. Hail them. Let me see who Varen's Commander Thane. Lyria's voice carried authority Ryan hadn't heard before. I'm surprised to see you commanding ships for my cousin's regime. I remember when you swore oaths to defend the crown regardless of who challenged it. Thane's patterns flickered with complex emotions. Your Majesty, we believed you dead. The official report stated you died during the coup, that your ship was destroyed. Convenient fiction allowing Varen to claim legitimate succession. Did you believe those reports, Commander? Thane's composure cracked slightly. We searched for months, found no evidence of survival. Eventually we had to accept, he paused, studying the bridge behind her. Who is the human beside you? This is Ryan Tors, my bonded consort. He claimed this vessel legally, triggering consort protocols. We are now bound by Velshara law. Thane's patterns showed absolute astonishment. You bonded with a human. The bond was automatic upon his claiming ownership. But yes, he now holds consort status with full sovereign code access. The tactical situation had shifted subtly. The 3 military vessels were still in intercept position, but they hadn't fired. Thane seemed torn between orders and discovery. Your Majesty, my orders are to investigate this vessel and secure any sovereign assets. If you're alive, if you're truly here, then, He looked off-screen, clearly receiving communication. Duke Varen is demanding immediate confirmation. He wants to speak with you directly. I'm sure he does. Tell my dear cousin that I decline his invitation to surrender. I assume that's what this conversation is leading toward. He'll order us to fire if you refuse. Will you follow that order? Thane was silent for a long moment, his pattern cycling through uncertainty. I don't know. My oaths were to the crown, but you abdicated through exile. Varen is legitimate sovereign now. Abdication requires formal renunciation. I fled, but I never renounced my crown. Legally, Varen is regent at best, usurper at worst. Legal arguments won't matter if he orders weapons fire. Ryan interrupted, his cargo hauler instincts recognizing opportunity. Commander Thane, you said you searched for the Queen for months. That suggests you wanted to find her, that you weren't comfortable with the official story. So here's the real question. Are you following Varen because you believe in his vision for Velshara, or because you thought you had no alternative? Thane's attention shifted to Ryan with surprise at being addressed by a human. Who are you to question my loyalty? I'm nobody, just a guy who bought a ship without knowing what he was getting into. But I've spent enough time navigating complicated situations to recognize when someone's following orders they don't believe in because they don't see better options. Ryan pulled up public records on his display, streaming them to Thane's ship. These are reports from Velshara Prime over the last 3 years. Crackdowns on reform supporters, arrests without trial, expansion of genetic purity laws. This is what you're defending by following Varen's orders. Thane studied the information, his patterns flickering with distress. The security situation required. It required exactly the authoritarian control Varen wanted. Queen Lyria's reforms threatened conservative power structures. The coup removed her. Everything since has been consolidating that power. You know this, Commander. The question is whether you're willing to acknowledge it. This is treason. Only if Varen is legitimate sovereign. If he's a usurper, then following his orders is the treasonous act. Lyria added, her voice carrying the weight of someone who'd spent 3 years questioning her choices. Thane, I made mistakes. My reforms were too aggressive, too fast, without sufficient coalition building. I threatened people whose support I needed. But I was trying to help our people, not oppress them. Varen is doing exactly what I opposed. If you truly serve the crown rather than individuals, then you need to decide which vision for Velshara you support. Thane's patterns had shifted to turmoil. Your Majesty, even if I believed you, I command 3 ships. We couldn't challenge the entire military. I'm not asking you to challenge anyone. I'm asking you to let us leave. To give me time to build legitimate challenge to Varen's authority rather than forcing confrontation neither of us is prepared for. He'll know we found you. My communication logs will show this conversation. Then your choice is to fire on your legitimate queen, or to let your logs show you chose honor over convenient orders. Lyria's voice softened. I remember you, Thane. You were part of my security detail before the coup. You evacuated royal archives when the palace fell. You risked yourself to preserve historical records. That was someone who served principles, not just power. Be that person again. The tactical display showed Thane's ships holding position, weapons armed but not firing. Long seconds passed while the commander made his decision. Finally, Thane spoke. My logs will show we found an abandoned royal vessel, investigated, found no sovereign assets. You were never here. I saw no evidence of Queen Lyria or any consort. His patterns had settled into determined resolution. But Your Majesty, I can't protect you from what comes next. Word is spreading about this vessel. More ships will come, sent by people less conflicted about their loyalties. I understand, thank you, Thane. Don't thank me, just be the queen you were trying to be, or become the queen you should have been, but don't waste this chance hiding. He cut the communication. The 3 military vessels altered course, withdrawing back toward Velshara space. Ryan exhaled. Well, that was terrifying. Lyria sat heavily, her bioluminescence showing exhaustion mixing with something like hope. Thane was right. More will come. This reprieve is temporary. But it proves something. You have loyalists. People who served you not because of genetic hierarchy or tradition, but because they believed in what you were trying to do. That matters. Perhaps. Lyria pulled up communication logs, scanning through them with growing intensity. Sanctuary, decrypt the coded transmission Thane sent before withdrawing. Decrypting now. Message reads, Loyalist network active, cells in 12 systems. Awaiting signal, we thought you were dead, come home. The bridge fell silent. There's a resistance, Ryan said quietly. People who have been waiting for you. People who think I can fix what Varen broke. Who expect me to be the queen I couldn't manage to be before exile. Or people who need a leader to rally around. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be present and willing to try. Lyria turned to look at him directly. You're remarkably confident in offering advice to a queen whose political situation you barely understand. I'm confident that hiding in a ship questioning yourself for 3 years hasn't solved anything. I'm confident that Thane risked his career to let us go because he believes you matter. And I'm confident that having sovereign codes and resources means nothing if you won't use them. You want me to return to Velshara space, to challenge Varen directly. I want you to decide what you believe. If you think Varen is better for your people than you were, then yeah, stay hidden and let him rule. But if you think progressive reforms were worth fighting for, if you think the authoritarian crackdown is worse than the instability you caused, then stop questioning yourself and do something about it. Sanctuary interjected. For what it's worth, the human makes a valid argument. 3 years of philosophical contemplation has been intellectually stimulating but strategically unproductive. You're supposed to be neutral, Lyria said. I am neutral regarding which decision you make. I am not neutral regarding whether you make a decision at all. Paralysis is still a choice. It's choosing to let others act while you process ethical uncertainty. Lyria stood, pacing the bridge with agitation. If I return, people will die. Loyalists will rally, Varen will respond, and civil war becomes inevitable. The violence I exiled myself to prevent will happen anyway. It's already happening. Ryan pulled up the reports he'd shown Thane. Quietly, through arrests and disappearances and authoritarian control, you exiled yourself hoping absence would prevent violence. Instead, your absence enabled different violence. Less visible, maybe, but still real. So my choice is between violence I cause through action versus violence I enable through inaction. Your choice is between fighting for what you believe in or letting fear paralyze you indefinitely. Neither option is clean, but one of them involves actually trying. Lyria stopped pacing, her bioluminescence shifting through rapid color changes that suggested intense internal conflict. Finally, her patterns settled into determined gold. All right, we return to Velshara space. We contact Thane's network. We build coalitions strong enough to challenge Varen's legitimacy. We accept that violence is likely and work to minimize it rather than pretending we can prevent it entirely. You're sure? No. I'm terrified this is exactly the wrong choice born from exactly the wrong motivations. But you're right that hiding while questioning myself hasn't solved anything. If I'm going to be wrong, I'd rather be wrong while trying than wrong while hiding. Ryan felt the weight of what they'd just committed to. So we're really doing this. Challenging a sitting government, rallying resistance forces, potentially starting a civil war. We are, and you're bound to this choice as much as I am. The consort bond means you can't escape consequences. I figured that out when military ships showed up to kill us. If I'm stuck in this situation, might as well make it mean something. Sanctuary's navigation displayed shifted, plotting routes back toward Velshara space. I am updating tactical assessments and communication protocols for insurgent operations. This is significantly more interesting than hiding. You're enjoying this, Lyria accused. I am a starship. I was designed for purpose, not indefinite parking in scrapyard. Finally having mission beyond remain undetected is satisfying. Ryan laughed despite the tension. Your ship has opinions. She has had 3 years to develop them. You'll learn to appreciate her commentary, or at least tolerate it. Over the next days, they contacted Thane's network, carefully reaching out to loyalist cells across multiple systems. Ryan discovered he was surprisingly good at this. His years navigating gray market politics translated well to building coalitions between groups with varying motivations. He spoke the language of practical necessity that military officers and merchants understood, while Lyria provided the ideological vision that inspired true believers. They learned the resistance was larger than either expected. Thousands had opposed the coup quietly, maintaining underground networks while waiting for Lyria's return. Her death had demoralized them, but the revelation of her survival ignited hope that had been dormant. Ryan also learned about Velshara politics through immersion rather than abstract briefing. He met resistance members who explained how Varen's genetic purity laws had destroyed their families, how reform policies Lyria championed had given them opportunities that traditional hierarchy denied, how her exile had felt like abandonment by the only leader who'd ever acknowledged their existence. He began to understand why Lyria's return mattered so much, not because she was perfect, but because she'd been willing to question systems everyone else accepted as inevitable. Their journey back toward Velshara Prime took 2 weeks of careful navigation, avoiding military patrol routes while contacting resistance cells. By the time they reached the outer territories, they'd assembled a coalition that included military defectors, merchant families whose businesses Varen's policies had destroyed, intellectuals who opposed the regression of progressive reforms, and genetic inferiors, who had the most to lose from conservative restoration. It wasn't an army, but it was a movement. The confrontation was inevitable. Varen wouldn't allow legitimate challenge to his authority. The question was whether they could make the challenge public enough that military action against them would expose Varen's authoritarian tendencies to moderate factions still supporting him. We broadcast from here, Lyria decided as they positioned Sanctuary in orbit around a mining station controlled by resistance sympathizers. System-wide transmission. We reveal my survival, present you as legitimate consort proving legal continuity, and demand Varen justify his authority. He'll send everything he has to kill us. Yes, but first he has to respond publicly. And his response will show everyone who he really is. Ryan reviewed their defensive positions. The mining station had modest defenses, and the resistance had positioned 3 armed vessels nearby. Against Varen's full military it was laughable, but they didn't need to win militarily, they needed to win politically. Sanctuary, prepare for system-wide broadcast, encryption protocols that prevent jamming. Prepared. You realize this will make you permanent target. Already am. Might as well make it official. Lyria stood at the center of the bridge, her formal attire restored, her bioluminescence displaying royal authority she'd hidden for 3 years. Ryan stood beside her, aware that his presence served multiple purposes: proof of legitimate consort bond, symbol of Lyria's willingness to ally with other species, and target that would draw fire away from her if assassination became necessary. Broadcast, Lyria commanded. Her image and voice transmitted across Velshara Prime and 12 neighboring systems, reaching millions of citizens who'd been told she was dead. I am Lyria, Queen of Velshara Prime. 3 years ago I fled a coup orchestrated by my cousin Varen, who claimed I died and assumed regency over our people. I did not die. I exiled myself, believing my absence would prevent civil war. I was wrong. The violence I sought to prevent has occurred anyway, quietly, through arrests and oppression and authoritarian expansion. Her bioluminescence shifted to colors Ryan had learned meant determined resolve. I return now not to reclaim power for its own sake, but to offer alternative vision for our people. I stand with my bonded consort Ryan Torres, human merchant whose claim on my vessel triggered ancient protocols. His presence proves legal continuity of sovereign authority. Our bond demonstrates my commitment to alliances my cousin opposes. Duke Varen, you have ruled for 3 years under claim of legitimate succession. I challenge that claim. Present your justification for authority. Demonstrate that your rule serves our people better than the progressive reforms you opposed. Prove that the authoritarian measures you've implemented are necessary rather than convenient consolidation of power. This is not military threat. This is legal challenge. You may respond through dialogue or through violence, but your choice will show all Velshara what kind of leader you are. I await your answer. The broadcast ended. Ryan felt his heart racing. No going back now. No, Lyria agreed. Now we see whether my people want the queen I was trying to be, or whether they prefer the stability Varen promises. The answer came within hours. Varen's response broadcast showed him standing in the royal palace, surrounded by military commanders and conservative council members. His bioluminescence displayed aggressive confidence. The traitor Lyria speaks of legal challenges while hiding behind armed insurgents. She abandoned our people, fled responsibility, and now returns demanding authority she surrendered through cowardice. Her so-called consort is human opportunist exploiting ancient protocols for personal gain. I offer Lyria one chance. Surrender yourself for trial regarding your failures as sovereign. Face judgment for reforms that destabilized our society and caused the violence you now decry. If you believe your rule was just, prove it through legal process rather than insurgent theater. Fail to surrender and you confirm what we always suspected, that you care more for power than for our people's welfare. Military forces are en route to your position. You have 12 hours to comply. The transmission ended. Ryan whistled. He's not subtle. He can't afford to be. Legal challenge exposes him. He needs to frame this as my selfish grasp for power rather than his illegitimate authority. Sanctuary reported. 6 Velshara military vessels entering system. 3 heavy cruisers, 2 destroyers, 1 carrier. Overwhelming force relative to our defensive capabilities. Thane, Lyria asked. Not among them. These commanders are Varen loyalists. Then we make our stand here. Broadcast to all resistance cells. Reveal yourselves. Let Varen see how many systems oppose his rule. Over the next hours, the situation transformed from localized standoff to system-wide crisis. Resistance cells across 12 systems simultaneously revealed themselves, broadcasting their support for Lyria and demanding Varen's resignation. Military units defected, commanders announcing they served the crown rather than usurpers. Merchant alliances declared economic non-cooperation with Varen's government. It wasn't complete uprising. Plenty of systems and commanders remained loyal to Varen, either from genuine support or fear of instability. But it was enough to show the opposition was real, widespread, and committed. Varen's approaching fleet represented his answer, overwhelming force to crush dissent before it could spread further. Ryan monitored tactical displays as the 6 ships closed on their position. We can't win this militarily. No, but we can make our defeat costly enough that moderates question whether Varen's authority is worth civil war. That's a grim strategy. It's the strategy available. Varen wants to eliminate me quickly before resistance can organize fully. We need to survive long enough to prove his authority requires continuous violence to maintain. The mining station's defenders prepared for battle. Resistance ships moved into defensive positions. Sanctuary activated all weapon systems, impressive for royal vessel but insufficient against military fleet. Then Commander Thane's voice came over communication channels. Queen Lyria, I'm inbound with 7 ships from 2nd Fleet. We declared for you 20 minutes ago. You have support. More transmissions followed, other commanders announcing defection, other ships joining the defense. Not enough to guarantee victory, but enough to make the battle expensive. Varen's fleet commander issued final demand. "Surrender Lyria or we fire." "Negative," Ryan responded before Lyria could. "You want her, you go through all of us, and the whole galaxy will watch what that looks like." The battle that followed was brief, brutal, and inconclusive. Varen's forces had numerical advantage, but defectors had eliminated his overwhelming superiority. The fighting damaged ships on both sides, killed personnel neither side could afford to lose, and accomplished nothing except proving both factions were willing to fight. But it proved something more important. Lyria's return had divided Velshara military. Varen no longer commanded unanimous loyalty. The civil war he'd threatened 3 years ago was beginning, not because Lyria sought it, but because neither side could back down without surrendering principles they'd staked everything on. The battle ended when both fleets withdrew to defensive positions, neither able to achieve decisive victory. In the aftermath, as they treated wounded and assessed damage, Ryan found Lyria standing at a viewport watching disabled ships drift in orbit. "This is what I feared," she said quietly. "Violence I caused through returning. Violence that was happening anyway, just quietly. At least now it's honest." He stood beside her. "Thane and others defected because they believe in you. They chose this, Lyria, you didn't force them. I gave them reason to choose it. That's responsibility I can't escape." "No, but you can try to minimize casualties going forward. You can build coalitions strong enough that Varen has to negotiate rather than fight. You can be the leader they need rather than hiding from the possibility you'll fail." She turned to look at him. "When did you become confident giving advice to queens?" "When I got accidentally bonded to one and realized she needed someone willing to tell her uncomfortable truths. That's apparently my role now, the consort who won't let you spiral into philosophical paralysis. That is terrible role description, but accurate." Sanctuary interrupted. "I am receiving communication request from Duke Varen. He wishes to negotiate." Lyria's bioluminescence shifted to surprise. "He wants to talk. Apparently civil war is expensive. He may be reconsidering direct confrontation." Ryan felt cautious hope. Could be trap. Almost certainly is trap, but also opportunity. If Varen is willing to talk, we might find resolution that doesn't require fighting until one side collapses. "You want to negotiate with the person who orchestrated your exile." "I want to stop people from dying if possible. That requires talking to enemies, not just allies." The negotiation that followed was tense, conducted via secure communication with both sides maintaining defensive positions. Varen was smooth, articulate, presenting himself as reasonable authority trying to stabilize civilization against irresponsible reformer. But his arguments revealed cracks. He couldn't justify the authoritarian measures without admitting his rule required them. He couldn't explain why progressive reforms were dangerous without sounding like he was protecting conservative privilege. And he couldn't dismiss Lyria's support without acknowledging she had substantial following. The negotiation didn't resolve anything immediately, but it established framework for continued dialogue, ceasefire terms that both sides could accept without losing face, an implicit acknowledgement that neither side could eliminate the other without catastrophic cost. Ryan watched Lyria negotiate with Varen and saw her growing confidence. Not the absolute certainty she'd had before exile, but the harder wisdom of someone who'd questioned herself thoroughly and emerged still believing her vision was worth fighting for. Days of negotiation followed. Slowly, painfully, a framework emerged. Transitional government including both factions, reforms implemented gradually with conservative input, independent commission to investigate coup and determine legitimate succession. It wasn't perfect. It didn't give either side everything they wanted, but it stopped the fighting and created process for resolving disputes politically rather than militarily. The formal agreement was signed 3 weeks after Lyria's broadcast. witnessed by representatives from multiple species, including human diplomatic corps, who'd been monitoring the situation nervously. Standing beside Lyria as she signed the document that returned her to political authority while constraining her power, Ryan reflected on how impossibly far they'd come from that auction, where he'd bought a ship he couldn't afford. Afterward, in Sanctuary's quiet bridge with crisis temporarily resolved, Lyria turned to him. "You realize you're now officially consort to Velshara Queen. That comes with expectations, ceremonies, political obligations you never asked for. I figured that out when we were being shot at, little late to complain about it now. You could request bond dissolution. The transitional government might honor it given the unusual circumstances of formation. Could, but I won't." "Why not? You wanted simple cargo hauling life. This is opposite of that." Ryan considered his answer carefully. "Because somewhere between buying a cheap ship and negotiating ceasefires, I started caring about this. About you, about your people, about whether reform happens or conservative factions maintain control. I'm invested now. Might as well make it official." Lyria's bioluminescence shifted to warm gold. "That is terrible reason to maintain consort bond. But honest, which seems appropriate given honesty is apparently my defining characteristic according to everyone. You are frustratingly direct. And you're frustratingly philosophical. We balance each other." Sanctuary's AI made sound of approval. "The human is correct. You provide ideological vision, he provides practical implementation. You question principles. He questions paralysis. It is functional partnership if unconventional. Thank you, Sanctuary. Your input is always something." "You are welcome, Queen Lyria. And Consort Ryan, your service record has been updated to reflect your new position. You may find it difficult to resume simple cargo hauling given your current political profile." Ryan laughed. "Yeah, I figured that out. Guess I'm a consort now. How hard can it be?" "Extremely difficult," Lyria said. "You'll need to learn protocols, attend ceremonies, navigate politics that make human customs look straightforward. Then I'll learn. Same way I learned to haul cargo through dangerous space, by adaptation and stubbornness. That is your solution to everything. It's worked so far." They stood together on the bridge, watching Velshara Prime rotate below, the planet representing both past failures and future possibilities. The transitional government would be complicated, reform implementation would face resistance, and conservative factions would challenge every change. But they were moving forward, together. Bound by ancient protocols they'd never chosen but were making mean something genuine. "What now?" Ryan asked. "Now we govern. We implement reforms carefully. We build coalitions. We prove progressive vision can coexist with stability. We probably fail sometimes, learn from it, and try again." Sounds exhausting. It is, but necessary, and Ryan, thank you, for claiming the ship nobody wanted, for staying when you learned the complications, for challenging my self-doubt when I needed it most. You're welcome, though I'm pretty sure I should be thanking you for the most interesting salvage purchase of my career. It was spectacularly bad salvage purchase by any reasonable metric. True, but I got a ship, a queen, sovereign codes, political purpose, and approximately a dozen near-death experiences. Could have been worse. Sanctuary interjected. "You also gained me, which is clearly the most valuable aspect of this arrangement." They both laughed, the sound carrying relief and hope and acceptance of the impossible situation they'd made work through stubbornness and improvisation. Outside, Velshara Prime continued its rotation, and across 12 systems, Resistance members who'd waited 3 years for this moment began the hard work of building the future they'd fought for. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be perfect. But it would be honest, which Lyria had learned mattered more than certainty. And Ryan, who just wanted a ship to haul cargo, discovered he'd found something better, purpose that meant something, partnership that challenged him, and the strange satisfaction of succeeding at things he'd never planned to attempt. Sometimes the universe gave you what you needed rather than what you wanted. Sometimes the ship nobody would claim became exactly the vessel that carried you where you needed to go. And sometimes accidental bonds became genuine partnerships that changed the course of civilizations. Ryan Torres, former cargo hauler turned consort to an alien queen, figured he could live with that.